And now I want to hand it over to the President of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin.
There's growing evidence to suggest that Joe Biden is not all there. He referred to the leader of Ukraine as President Putin. He referred to his own Vice President Kamala Harris as Vice President Trump. He wrongly referred to Donald Trump as the sitting president while Biden was in fact the sitting president. He said there were plans to build a railroad over the Indian Ocean. He mixed up Egypt and Mexico while speaking about the Israel-Hamas conflict. He mixed up the wars in Ukraine and Iraq. He referred to UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak as Mr. President. He mixed up French President Emmanuel Macron with former French President Francois Mitterrand, who died in 1996. And he accidentally referred to himself as the first black woman to serve in the White House. Biden's always been a little bit gaffe prone, but this is next level.
President Putin. You can beat President Putin. President Zelenskyy. I'm so focused on beating Putin, we got to worry about it.
Now the Democrats are freaking out, a bunch of them are publicly calling for him to step aside, his own campaign is said to be secretly testing Vice President Kamala Harris's popularity, and the world is glued to everything Biden says and does, waiting for the next inevitable cringe. The level of global public interest in Biden's state of being is unprecedented. Even if you don't follow the US election, you can't look away. It's almost as if Biden's apparent increasing senility transcends US politics. Now the big question is, will Joe Biden step down? Biden has given no indication that he'll withdraw from the race. Now, this could be a totally genuine sentiment or not. As Australians would know from our own history of leadership spills, it's rare for a politician to publicly quit until push comes to shove. So what would happen if Biden withdrew? Well, Biden's nomination is set to be formalized at the Democratic National Convention in mid-August, where it's expected that delegates from every US state and territory will vote him in. If he were to drop out of the 2024 race, he would remain president until next January nonetheless. If he drops out of the race and his current presidency, Kamala Harris would take over for the rest of his term by default. Now, you'd assume this would automatically make Harris the candidate for the 2024 election, but technically, it's not that simple. See, we're not talking about the contingency protocol for when a president dies or becomes incapacitated. There's actually nothing concrete in the Constitution about replacing a presidential candidate who withdraws halfway through. If Biden stays in the race, most of those delegates will vote for him. If he withdraws, Harris would be the likely replacement. She's the vice president, she's second in charge, she's his right-hand woman. But the delegates are supposed to reflect the sentiments of the Democrats who voted in the primaries, and Harris wasn't a contender. Now, there's a lot of pros and cons to the vice president. She's already got the name recognition, she's got all the professional experience to prosecute her party's case against Donald Trump, and she would inherit the Biden administration's legislative wins to date. She also has massive support among the black community and young voters, and she's performed well on key issues like healthcare, gender inequality, and climate change. But on the other hand, Harris is consistently polling as poorly as Biden. She's not as trusted when it comes to immigration and foreign policy, she's faced criticisms of underperformance throughout her tenure, and the majority of voters don't see her as a strong leader or as trustworthy. And then there's the additional challenge of having to quickly rebrand herself through the lens of a president, as opposed to vice president of the Biden administration. Now, of course, there are other options in the Democratic Party. California Governor Gavin Newsom, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, and Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. None of them have quite the same profile as Harris, but that doesn't rule them out. So what if Biden stays in the race? This is the prospect that a number of Democrats are quite rightfully concerned about. But despite Biden's poor performance, it's still possible that he could beat Donald Trump. Trump may be leading the polls, but the polls have been wrong before, and Trump has been found guilty of 34 criminal charges and is facing plenty more. And if there's one thing we've learned from recent US elections, it's that anything's possible.